The Strength Beyond Struggle podcast brings you mental health stories from the front lines. We're sponsored by Ending the Silence, a program by the National Alliance for Mental Illness, NAMI, funded by the Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System. We bring you the stories of people with lived experience. We do not offer therapy for any mental health condition and cannot substitute for professional assessment and treatment. In every episode, we deal with difficult mental health topics, including suicide. So if you're struggling, remember, you can always get help by calling 988. Welcome to the Strength Beyond Struggle podcast, and I'm with Adrian Arciniega, a young man who is volunteering his time and working with NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness, as a youth presenter. Also, you have quite the story about how ADHD sort of tagged along throughout your life and really created a lot of issues through school, through all kinds of things. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, totally. I was actually made aware that I had what was called ADD, now recognized as ADHD, when I was pretty young, probably 3 or 4. Sorry, I just misspoke. I was diagnosed at 6 or 7. But I remember as young as 3 or 4, I had this specific situation with my uncle where I was in preschool, I believe, and we were learning how to count. We were learning math stuff. I remember too, because I was so excited when my brother came home and he could count and I couldn't yet. And I was like, wow, what's this many? He's like 7. And I was like, what about this? And he's like, it's 10. And I was like, dang, this is so cool. And I remember being excited to learn math as well. But I just struggled with it, to be perfectly honest. I struggled to just, grab the concepts, probably because I was 4. But I remember them sending me home with some tutoring and saying hey, Adrian needs to practice this and that. So my uncle sat me down for a little tutoring session. I was on the bed doing my math homework, and we were taking a long time. So he was getting pretty frustrated, and he was like, every time you put your pencil down, it takes us 10, 15 seconds extra, longer to do the question. So he's like, so no more putting your pencil down. And I was like, okay. And I kept putting my pencil down. So he's just like, okay, new rule. Every time you put your pencil down, I'm going to spank you with the belt.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, a little harsh, but whatever. I don't make the rules here. So I was just doing my homework and got stumped again. So I put my pencil down. I'm like, how do you do this? And just, I'm super whiplash. I was oh my gosh. And I pick up my pencil and I was like, oh crap, I just put my pencil down, and I got a whooping. And then that went on for a bit, because it took me a while to finish the assignment. And I probably put my pencil down at least 3 or 4 more times. And
got a whooping every single.
Yeah. And literally it was just should I pick my pencil back up? And it was probably around, the 6th time where I was like, forget the math. I was like, dude, why do you keep putting your pencil down? I was
4 years old, you're saying this to yourself?
Yeah. I was having a conversation with myself in my head, because I was like, bro, obviously I was using these exact terminology, but I was like, dude, you got to lock in. I was like, you are putting your pencil down, and every time you put your pencil down, you are going to experience pain. So do not put the pencil down again. And to be perfectly honest, I probably put it down a couple more times, but we got through that assignment. We got it done. But I remember once the whole situation was done, I went back to my room and I was like, well, that seemed like a lot, But I kind of had to question, I was it was the first time I had these questions of it kind of felt like in there, my brain and body weren't
in sync?
Yeah, they really weren't listening to each other. I was like, okay, hey, we got to do this math and we cannot put the pencil down, no matter what. And the next thing you know, before you know it, I was getting whooped, and I was just like, dang, you put the pencil down again. So I remember even as young as 3 or 4 thinking I don't know if my brain works.
Well, it's
right.
Interesting, because you and I were talking right before the show, and we were kind of saying, so what is really going on with the brain with ADHD? And what it said in there was that the chemicals are just kind of not firing right, which affects this prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, exactly.
It's where you make decisions and planning and organization. I have a daughter with ADHD, and bipolar, but the ADHD is definitely, getting her to focus on a task and complete something, fill out a form.
That something as simple as that can sometimes be quite the challenge. I can attest to that.
Correct. Well, but besides the ADHD, you just mentioned that your uncle was teaching you math, not your father. So
No.
where were your parents in your childhood?
They were kind of in and out of the picture a lot. Mostly my mother. They had some pretty rough upbringings and past. They had a lot of drug abuse, a lot of drug history. So most of our lives, mom and dad were in and out of prison. Dad went to prison so much, and to my understanding, was never really a U.S. citizen. So he's been deported to Mexico, and that's where he lives now. But I didn't have like a super deep relationship with my father. I've probably only seen him a handful of times. My mom also in and out of prison for mostly like meth use and theft and just like some other like sometimes intense things, sometimes petty things, but sort of just like their lifestyle and their sort of upbringing. So yeah, they weren't in the picture a ton, which
Correct.
left the responsibility of raising us to whichever family member was willing to pick up the torch, which was my uncle a lot of times and my great.
That's your mom's brother?
Yes, my mom's brother and my mom's
Mom's?
yeah, would pick up that slack a lot.
Okay. And so,
Very grateful for that.
yeah, I know. And how wonderful that you could be with family instead of like in the foster care system.
Yeah,
It's a
because
nightmare on its own.
yeah, that I've heard just so many gnarly stories. I love the good stories. The good stories are so inspirational, but just like anything else, once you get into the bad stories, you're like, that system could definitely use a little restructuring, ideally, because wow, yeah.
So I'm getting to that because you're living with your family members. It was your grandmother who actually was the one who kind of pushed you in the direction of getting the diagnosis.
Yes, that happened when I was living with her around ages, I think I was ages like 5 to 8, I would say. We lived with her, me and my older brother lived with her and my grandpa. And so that was like second and third grade. And due to, mom and dad always, being knuckleheads, we moved around a lot, moved schools a lot. So, I was like at this school, I was in third grade now. So I'd already been there for like half a year. And for me, that was a long time. So I was like, oh, I'm getting pretty established here. I had like a lot of friends. I was having like a lot of fun. I was able to like put down some roots, like 6-7 months when you're 7 feel like a long, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You're just like, oh my gosh, this is
Forever.
Yeah, a great time, like these are the people I'll know for the rest of my life. So, but it was in third grade where I really kind of started to get in trouble here and there. And I would say like my ADHD really came in prominent and started manifesting in a lot of interesting symptoms. But like I'd probably just say the one that like brought it home so much was that I just couldn't stay in my seat. And I'd get in trouble. We used to have cards, little card system back in the day. You start at green, everybody starts at green. If you get in trouble, you pull it and go down a number of colors until you hit red. Once you hit red, they send a note home or further different styles of discipline. And I remember getting in trouble pretty often for my teacher just saying like, Adrian, like stop talking. Adrian, like get back in your seat. Adrian, stop walking around. And I can honestly say, like, I am so sorry, Miss Dawson, for being in your class and being such a pain in third grade. But it wasn't out of just like no like ill intent towards Miss Dawson. I didn't like not like Miss Dawson. Wasn't just trying to be defiant. It wasn't just like screw this class. I'm just trying to mess it up any way I can. It was just that my friends
control yourself, could you?
It didn't feel like, or at least this is how I'll put it. My friends sat on the other side of the classroom because when I sat with them, I would talk too much. So I got moved to the other side of the classroom. But I wanted to go talk to my friends.
Of course.
So it was just like, it was kind of like the belt and the pen thing. Like Miss Dawson would just be like, Adrian. And I'd be like, what? And she'd be like, go sit down. And I'd be like, when did I get over here? Like, when did I get out of my seat? And I was like, now I'm just across the room at Quentin's desk talking to Quentin. And I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah, my bad. And I'd go back to my seat, and then I can only imagine how annoying it is as a teacher. By like the third time, you're just like, dude, get back to your seat. Yeah, you're disrupting the class. Like, I don't want to tell you this one more time. And like by that point, I'm again questioning myself, like, bro, what is wrong with you? Like, when did you get back over? Why can't you just stay in your seat? Have you ever stopped that? Like, ask yourself that question for a sec. And I was like, I don't know, but I would get in trouble so often. They started sending letters home, and they'd be like, Adrian is a big disruption in class, talks too much, is a class clown, doesn't do his work, and won't.
That's a lot of label.
Won't stay in his seat. And I remember my grandparents literally like getting this list and being like, back then I was so little, so scared. I was just like, my grandparents really weren't mean at all. They were pretty nice, but it's like when you're getting in trouble, you're always scared. So I was like so scared, but they were just like, what does this last one mean? What is it? What does won't stay in your seat mean? They're like, what does that mean? And I was like, I don't know. I think I don't stay in my seat and I just like walk around or like go to my friend's desk. And they're like, why don't you just stay in yours? I remember them being confused by it, which is like, I noticed a pattern in that too, where it's just like when people would be confused by why I did
your behavior
like,
was that like
exactly,
way.
and I wouldn't really have a good explanation for them because I'd be like,
well, you don't, because you don't know that your chemicals are misfiring in your brain.
I don't know they're misfiring. I don't know how to articulate that they're misfiring. I'm still asking like, is something wrong with me? It's like years later until I'm just like, oh, there's something wrong with me. But that did spark them to be like, hey, well, like, maybe he has like a learning disorder or something. So they did take me to the doctors. And they were like, yeah, hey, this kid has ADD pretty hard, so we might want to get him on some medication or something. So we did actually. They back then it was called ADD, so they prescribed me with some medication.
What was it? Do you remember?
It was Adderall.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Adderall, and I don't imagine that it was very strong, probably in like the 5 milligram range or something. But
we're a little kid.
I was a little kid, and I ain't very tall. I'm like 5'3". So as a kid, I was probably like 1'3". Yep. I was just like, I was the smallest kid ever all the time. So yeah, I remember taking that medication for a while, and it actually like making me low-key a perfect like functioning human in society. But
you didn't like yourself, you said.
I didn't. I remember us talking about that. I didn't feel like myself at all, which again, like, it's weird because like I see kids so young and you don't think that they're thinking.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's very interesting for you to be reporting to me and the audience these thoughts you have as a child, which I think that everyone should be aware. Kids are always watching and they're way more aware than you think they are.
And that's the thing. Yeah. Like you might think like, oh, kids aren't smart because they're not saying the smartest things, but you'll be shocked at sometimes of the things that they think about. And like, if you bring up certain concepts to them, you're like, have you ever heard about this or like thought about this? And they're like, yeah, like they don't seem very surprised. And you're like, okay, so you've done a bit of thinking like on your own, again, whether you know how to say it or like even articulate the thoughts that are going down in your head. But like, I do remember taking Adderall, being like kind of stoked, like, oh, hey, like I'm finally doing all the stuff that people get so mad at me for. Like I can probably finally get these people off my back was like my thought. But I remember just having what seemed like somewhat intrusive thoughts that felt really productive and felt like, oh, you could do this or maybe you should do that. And it just didn't feel like me thinking the thoughts. It felt like they were coming from some sort of outside source, and I didn't like that feeling. On top of that, it took away my appetite 100%, and that's my favorite thing to do is eat. So I was like, yeah, I kid you not, like as weird as it might sound, it took a lot of joy out of my life because I love eating. It brings me so much joy. That because I was never hungry, I was like, well, what am I working for? Like I was like, I'm so little. I like to eat, like to hang out with my friends. I like being like energized and stuff. But when I'm on this, I don't really feel like myself.
And you're 8 years old, right?
At this point, yeah, I'm probably 7 because this was 3rd grade, and I always started kind of early.
Okay, 7 years old.
Yeah,
have
7
thoughts.
Yeah,
these are really kind of adultish thoughts. Think about it. And then you say, so you're taking this, you're really unhappy. So what did you do with it?
I just stopped taking it, and I don't know.
It's permission.
Yeah, I don't think I asked anybody right away because I was just like, I don't like this. Like I was like, so I'm just not going to take it. Like I was like, I get that it makes everybody else happy with me, but like I'm not happy with me. And that was just, to be honest, important to me. It's still important to me. But even at that age, I was like, if this is how I have to live my life to be like accepted by everybody, then I don't think I really care to do it. Wow. And I just decided not to take it. I don't think I told my grandma or anybody for a while. I was just like, oh, I'll just see how long before they notice. And then I think I started getting in trouble at school again. So my grandma was like, hey, are you like taking your medication? And I remember, I don't even feel like I went like that deep into it because I don't think I could say the things I'm saying now back then. But I did share to my grandma when she asked me that I just didn't like it and that I just didn't feel like myself. And if my memory serves me correctly, she didn't make me keep taking it. She was just like, okay, well, if you don't like it that much, I'm not going to force you to take it. And we'll just try other stuff and figure out other stuff, But like we do got to like dial in your behaviors at school, because if not, you're going to get in trouble by the school. And, we just we got to work through it somehow.
So you said that, so did you get through like elementary okay with that? I don't know. Was it force of will or because you loved your grandma, you want to make her happy? But you said in high school, it kind of caught up with you again.
It did. I'd say I got through middle school. Um, I think what I honestly am remembering kind of more so now than even when we spoke before is that I was mindful of it. So like I could sort of catch myself like getting in trouble and like doing my absolute best to think ahead, which I know sounds like the simplest concept, but I remember when I was younger, people being like, hey, we're just gonna need you to like think before you act or like think before you speak. And I would just stare at them like, okay, like I get the idea of what you're saying, but I don't get how that's like possible. Cause like you just do things. No, you just do things. And then like after you got to be like, okay, no, that was bad or that was good. Or you're like, but,
Oh my God, you sound so much like my nephew.
yeah, no, but there's like,
he does these things and you're like, Aaron, did you think about it? He's like, no, I just had to do it, you know?
no. And it's just like, this is going to be super off topic. I'll be really fast for this, but that 70s show, Michael Kelso, if anybody ever watches Michael Kelso, he's the epitome of like, he's walking, talking ADHD in a beautiful, handsome body. And like, I remember like he drops a bowling ball on the couch, it bounces, hits the television, shatters, and everybody's just like, and he just goes, well, I never even thought of that. Like, you know, and it's just like, you're like, that's probably like the second thing anybody else would have thought. But I'm just like, I can't tell you how many times I've used that line in my own life. Like things just go south. I'm like, I never even thought that could happen. I never even crossed my mind, you know?
Oh my God.
Yeah. But, so,
Aaron says the same thing too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's these consistencies though. But I know that when he was being raised and at about 8 years old, it was really hard for our family to just be like, dude, just like he would basketball it. We had to have a basketball hoop every week. And it was like, could we not have the basketball for like, and he couldn't. And that's the thing. So I'm trying to, and it was hard for my sister and my brother-in-law to cope with that. And so with you in high school, and what I'm trying to help the audience understand is that, well, also we've done a little research and found out about 9% of the U.S. population could be diagnosed with ADHD, which is quite a few people.
That's a decent amount.
Right, exactly. And so I think that being aware and understanding would help a lot of kids because like I said, in high school, you had a tough ending to your high school career.
I did. Yeah, no, that didn't end super well. And it's trippy how many things I'm remembering in this conversation right now. Like when you were talking about like how it went down in elementary school, I think my grandma stepped in and started talking to my teachers a little more and sort of just like
brought awareness to
like literally like during like the back to school night and teacher conference. Cause like, I wouldn't say I leveled out towards the end of elementary school. If anything, I just like kept getting.
You survived it, man.
Yeah. But like, it was almost like my teachers got a lot better at like dealing with me.
Meeting you where you're at.
Kind of. Yeah. And it's kind of a bummer to view it that way and be like, man, there must have been like a lot of work on the teachers. And it definitely was, but it helped a lot. Cause literally a memory like you just unlocked. I'm just like, you know, like how did it get any better? And we'd have this joint classroom that would join two separate classrooms. I remember them putting me in there quite a bit, which seemed like, you know, like a punishment, but it was just like, there wasn't much to distract me and it was a lot quieter and it was a lot cooler, like temperature wise. And I remember going in there a few, like on separate occasions just to like take a test or if like finish a test. And I remember it seeming like random. Like I was like, why do I have to go in? I remember thinking I was in trouble and they're like, you're not in trouble. And I was like, then why do I have to go in there? And they're like, just go in there. And I would go in and I'd come out like, you know, 10 minutes later with my test done, sometimes like faster than other kids. And that never dawned on me until right now that they were probably doing that. Like,
to do that with my daughter in college. She had struggled with tests and timing, and
no, totally.
She got compensation for that. And so it seems to be, as we go, unfortunately, when you went to school, it was in 2000, you said in high school was
2009 to 2012.
12.
Yeah.
I don't think there was as much awareness. And I just had the high school counselor on, Katie Tenney, and she said, this is where social media has actually done a good job. Open up the conversation about mental health.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And so when you were in high school, it still wasn't open then.
Not really. And unfortunately, by the time you get to high school, that's when, I guess not unfortunately for me, that's when they're really trying to drill structure into you, you know, like you gotta like, asked to go to the bathroom. And like I remember like even just the lunch system was very like just weird kind of looking back on it. But But yeah, that's where they like definitely want a lot of structure, and you have several 8 classes at a time that you're like trying to manage and do homework for. And well, that was never my specialty in the first place. And but it was kind of funny because like I feel like there were areas where I'm like, okay, like I'm really like struggling here, but then there were other areas where I found a lot of freedom due to just finding other kids who like also, safe to say, had ADHD, you know, like
What kind of classes were those?
where I found honestly a lot of them. I think it was just like, but just by being around a few extra thousands of kids, like elementary school and junior high, it felt a lot more isolated. It felt more like a lot more alone. Granted, even junior high, I was just like, oh, hey, that kid just did like some of the random things that I do, you know, or just like, I'm like, that kid also gets chewed out for not staying in his seat. And it was almost like being able to watch me from my own eyes and perspective. And that alone helped me feel very just less alone, like, and just more like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not stupid, especially because none of those kids, in my opinion, were stupid, which is like, you know, something I kind of.
So in high school, you met more kids like
in high school, yeah, I just met kids who were like, you know, just struggling with ADHD symptoms, and I was
Hold on one sec.
no worries. You're all good, brother.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So in high school, you said that you met up with a lot of other kids that were like you.
Yeah, that I feel like just kind of would either like something as simple as like, you know, struggling to stay still, or would just, this literally brought me a lot of joy because this is something that used to make me feel just truly stupid. But the teacher would say something, explain some stuff, give some instructions. 5 seconds later, my brain has no memory of it. And I was just like, I totally forgot the teacher just said it. I'm way too embarrassed to ask right now. And I'd be like, hey, you know, Johnny, like, what did the teacher just say? He's like, I can't remember. I have no idea what the teacher just said.
Oh,
like, oh gosh, no, John, I love you, but I hate you at the same time. And then we're like, Melissa, she's like, how do you guys, the teacher just said it. You guys already forgot it. We're like, that's why we need you here, Melissa. You know, you always remember. Like, if Johnny and I, we flunk out if it weren't for you. So it was like little areas like that where I was just like, why can't he remember what the teacher said like 1 second ago? Same way I can't. Why can't she? And just like, it was in areas like that where I was like, I think this guy's kind of like me. Or it's just like, or it feels like this person's like me. You're like, they're like me too. Or they're like me. And I just found more people struggling with things that I struggled with. And at least for me personally, when I'm struggling with anything, something happens to my brain where I'm just like, you are the only person on the planet that is struggling with this, and you can't talk about it because that will make you even more insufficient and insignificant. And I just try to process it, combat it, and beat it all by myself. And that does not work out great. I can tell you that right now.
That's why you're kind of doing the ending the silence thing.
Oh, no, 100%. Yeah. In case anybody else is feeling that way, like I can just like look at you and tell you like, hey, you're not alone, because if you struggle with any of those things, now you know I struggle with those too. So we can work together.
Yeah.
Because yeah, man, I'd say in the earlier years, I really struggled to believe that anybody else thought like this.
Right.
And then yeah, come high school, I started skateboarding with my friends, which is where I found a lot of other kids that just like, you know, I was like, whoa, you guys all seem to be have a couple screws loose, you know, like I do. And that was very uplifting. I think the skateboarding, which I never realized was such good exercise and so constant. We would skate from 7 in the morning to like 7 at night. I kid you not. With just little eating breaks, but we'd skate all over town. We'd skate all the way to Huntington Beach, which is like 3 hours away from where we lived. And we'd skate all the way back, and getting that amount of physical exercise in a day, I think did wonders for like my ADHD and how to manage my symptoms, which I never put 2 and 2 together until I was much older. And was trying to implement exercise back into my regimen because I was like, what can I do to like, you know, help me in this? So I think the skateboarding helped a lot in high school, but like the pressure and emphasis on structure and timelines and dates and
multiple tasks. You've said 8 classes and managing all of that homework, which is just not an ADHD person specialty.
I know. And somebody even just said it the other day, and it was really uplifting. It was a conversation just like that. Like, oh, how are you doing with, you know, those classes and everything? Because I'm in school again now. And I was like, oh, I'm doing good. And they're like, yeah, I mean, ADHD must be like hard to manage like that many classes. And then my wife, who's, you know, already got her degree, she's like, it's hard without ADHD too. They're like, it's hard for anybody to manage like she's like, and I don't know, that was just uplifting to hear, you know, because I feel like a good portion of my life have been, people try to put me in that box. And I've never been big about putting myself into any boxes.
Oh, labeling yourself as ADHD.
Yeah, because I feel like that just
It's just something you live with. I mean, if you had diabetes, it would be diabetes. You didn't call a diabetic, oh, you are diabetic.
Yeah.
You are the diabetes. It is, you live with it.
There's this popular video, it's just a short clip on social media where it's just like a brother and his sister, and he's littler and she's bigger, and she's like, this is, Devin or something. She's like, he suffers from autism, and he like starts laughing. He's like, I don't suffer from it, I just have it. And it's just like such a heartwarming. They both start like laughing, and it's just like such a heartwarming clip because that's how he views it and internalizes it and sees it. And it's just like, it is like really easy to be like, oh, you have like this thing that seems to be disabling you in some way. Like, you must really suffer from that, like on a daily basis. And it can make some things harder. I will argue that it makes some things easier and more enjoyable.
Yes, yes.
And that like, you don't have to suffer necessarily through everything you're going through. You can use it to better yourself. You can use it always to like learn so much about yourselves. And you can use it to relate to others. So it's like, even if there is like an element of suffering, it doesn't have to be wasted. It doesn't have to be just pain. Right. It doesn't have to be something that you just get through and survive through. It can be something that you use as power to like.
So, but he didn't use it in high school.
No, I did not.
And
oh man,
and you went, as a lot of people do, into a dark place and made some decisions that weren't in your best interest.
That is 100% true. Yeah, come high school, it was probably where me and my buddy started experimenting with like drugs, and it started with weed. But I'd say before we were done with freshman year, we were 14. We were 13 when it started, but we were 14 when it ended. And we racked up just a good list of, we were just bored and in a suburb town. And I say I was bored a lot, but I also had some stuff going on at home and this and that. And I think when I was just outside of my home, I just felt so free and alive and just wanted to experience everything that there was like to experience. So, yeah, we got pretty into drinking, pretty into smoking, pretty into, well, and those things seemed so harmless that I was like, okay, well, I drank and I smoked, and those I used to think were, the devil. So I was like, so the fact that we just did them and survived, I think we're fine to, experiment with other drugs. And we got into like cocaine and acid and some research chemicals and other psychedelics, along with just like whatever came through the town at the time. And so the drugs they did a number on me in a way where it's, once we got into the psychedelics, I feel like they, like a lot of people would admit and say too, just from their experience, that it expanded their mind in a way. And I do feel like that happened. And the best way I can even hope to explain it is that I just started thinking deeper about like things I didn't really used to think about before, like how long I was going to live, and like what my exact purpose was here on this earth, and why things work the way they work, why there's so much like suffering in the world as opposed to good. I felt like before the drugs, I was just out living, trying to have a good time. And then it's like after the drugs, I thought about things that were actually like kind of meaningful and important.
But you didn't have kind of context for it.
Exactly. I didn't have any context for them, and it didn't come from like proper exposure to them. Like I didn't go to like these third world countries and see that. It's almost like it was just dumped in my brain, and I was just kind of sad all of a sudden. And I was just like, dang, okay, so this world's kind of like messed up and kind of broken, and I didn't feel equipped to make any real changes in it, especially because I didn't view myself as a person capable of doing a whole lot, honestly. And yeah, that kind of just led me to be very confused and get very angry and feel just kind of overall sad about a lot of things. So yeah, I think it was around like 18 where I was like, okay, I'm like, not doing so hot. My family's also like, you're not doing so hot. So they recommended that I go to rehab, which is here in Arizona where I did it. And so yeah, I moved out here when I was like 18 years old to Payson, Arizona, 2012. I remember it was like December, 3 days before Christmas. And I enrolled in rehab for the first time. Yeah, which was a whole nother experience in and of itself. And stayed there for like about 2 months. And real quick, I'm seeing that we're running out of time, so I'm kind of wondering like,
let's wrap. We can just say that because we're going to talk about the rehab and how this helped you in the future podcast, but we will wrap it up soon saying that, yeah, you went home for a little while. You kind of relapsed a bit.
100%.
And then you came back to Payson.
Yeah.
And you said, I'm going to commit to this. And that's kind of when you turned your life around, wasn't it?
Yeah, 100%. It was a very faith-based rehabilitation center. So it's like the whole time everybody was trying to get me on board with believing in Jesus Christ and letting me know that he could help me and has a plan for my future and like an answer to all my questions, which I thought was total bogus. But after just like months of dedicating myself to trying to better myself, mostly trying to understand and dedicate myself to, is this whole Jesus thing real or not? He met me where I was and I devoted my life to him. And after that, things really started to change. I feel like he just started giving me daily advice every day on how I could better myself. And the more I took that advice and ran with it, the more I really got under wraps, just so many elements and things of my life, from my eating to my sleeping to my physical activity to
your relationship.
My relationships with everybody, my relationship with him, just how I conduct myself when I'm stressed, when I'm angry, when I'm scared.
And you actually spent a little time being a youth pastor for a while, which got you in touch with younger people.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's another reason why we're coming around to, it's just a natural for you to fit with ETS and being a youth presenter. And thank you so much for doing that. And we will come back
of course,
to talk about how that worked and how it works in your life now as a tool for you.
Heck yeah. I'm excited for it.
Thank you, Adrian.
No worries.
Adrian offers a perfect example of the challenges posed by attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. No one knew he had it for a long time. And like lots of kids that develop big problems, he had a difficult family. 80% of kids with ADHD struggle with other challenges, and that includes Adrian. He had anxiety and depression, and he wondered why he was different. Fortunately, we've discovered tools for kids with ADHD. Some prescription drugs help a lot, so can therapy and counseling. But families can do a lot to help. One fascinating study involved 4,000 families showed that kids from resilient families were less likely to develop ADHD. And if they did show symptoms, they were milder. So, what's a resilient family? That's a family with good communications, problem-solving skills, the open expression of affection, and other traits. The parents help kids develop problem-solving strategies. They have hopeful attitudes, flexibility, strong communications, and they tell the truth. They also practice spirituality, prioritize emotional health, and seek and offer social support. But here's another important finding. About 43% of kids with ADHD grow up to have outstanding mental health and live a happy, fulfilled life. Here are a couple of studies we found about ADHD. You can find links to these and more on our website, strengthbeyondstruggle.org. A study published in the Journal of Attention Disorders found that half of people with ADHD also must deal with depression, anxiety, and stress. They even had more problems with cardiovascular fitness. Here's another study summarizing research about the causes of ADHD. It was online in Medical News Today. The study concluded that genes account for about 74% of ADHD. The genes make a kid vulnerable, but it often takes other factors to cause a problem. Studies have found differences in brain areas that control movement, reward processing, emotional regulation, emotion, and motivation. Other studies found ADHD might have something to do with dopamine in the brain. Various studies have found surprising risk factors in development of ADHD. That includes a traumatic brain injury in a toddler, exposure to alcohol or cigarettes in the womb, extremely low birth weight, lack of oxygen at birth, and childhood traumas. Researchers have also debunked certain myths. ADHD isn't caused by eating sugar, too much TV, or video games, or a lack of parental discipline. So, what does it all mean? ADHD is serious. It has complicated long-term effects, and we're not doing nearly enough to help kids like Adrian cope. But don't forget, we're not doomed. You can lead a full, happy, successful life. Families can help. Friends can help. We have medications and therapies. Just listen to Adrian's story. We've got this as soon as we end the silence.
It's okay to just be me. We're all made to be unique. It's okay to have my needs. It's okay to be me. What's easy for others are struggles for me. I do things differently. Doesn't make me broken, it just makes me me. People out there help me through, ones who care about me and you. Through my struggles I find my strength. Feels so good to be me. What's easy for others are struggles for me. I do things differently. Doesn't make me broken, it just makes me me. People helping me to get through have their own struggles too. Even though they have their strength, they are human like me. Through these struggles we build our strength. We all want to feel healthy. Even though we make mistakes, struggles build our strength.